Hi everyone, welcome to today's video where we're going to discuss The Famine Road by Ivan Boland. Many of you will have done this in class, so this is just a quick revision video, going back over the main points, looking at poetic devices, the themes, and just giving you a summary of the poem. As you know, there are two poems within this poem. The first one about the famine in Ireland and the famine roads in which the British forced the Irish to build. And the second poem is a woman dealing with infertility. Okay, we'll begin. Idle as trout in light, Colonel Jones. So they're describing the Irish as idle as trout in light. Basically, the Irish are lazy. They're like trout out of water. They can't do anything. They're lazy. These Irish, give them no coins at all. So they're having a meeting about what to do about the Irish. So give them nothing. Basically, they're not worthy of anything. Okay, their bones need toil. They need to work. Their characters no less. So Trevelyan is telling Colonel Jones that no, we don't need to give them coins. We don't need to give them. We need to get them, make them work, and their character needs work. Okay, so basically the entire Irish race needs work. The entire Irish race is lacking in character. They're lazy. All the stereotypical things that the Irish have been described through the years. Trevelyan has used them all. You may remember Trevelyan's name from, if you've ever heard the Fields of Athenry, for he stole Trevelyan's corn. So Trevelyan's seal blooded the deal table. Now, the seal there would be the wax that was used for the letter that was being sent to Colonel Jones. The Relief Committee deliberated, so they discussed, might it be safe, Colonel, to give them roads to force from nowhere going to nowhere, of course. Okay, so in order for the Irish to get whatever little bit of food that they were going to give them, they were going to forced to build roads. Now, these roads went nowhere. Okay, absolutely nowhere. It was used as a way to punish them, and it would actually be used in prison. The chain gangs you'd often have seen forced to do manual labour to keep them out of trouble, out of mischief. These were people, a famine was going on, there was no food due to the potato blight. Okay, so the first verse there you see, and you'll actually see a simile there, idle as trout in light, Colonel Jones. So, forced to build roads, that was at the famine roads, and many people believed they wanted them to build these roads to keep them occupied while the British were able to take food and export it to Britain. Now, within the poem, there's also a second poem. 1 out of every 10, and then another third of those again, women in a case like yours. This is a woman dealing with the fact that she cannot have a baby, and the doctor. The doctor, I suppose, speaks to her in not quite as harsh as Trevelyan and Colonel Jones, but again, using statistics, a lack of empathy. Okay, so for the doctor there, we have a real lack of empathy there. Statistics, I think someone who was dealing with an issue like this doesn't really want to hear statistics. So you have two poems there, and we'll, I suppose, explain how the poems are interlinked as we move through. Okay, we're just going to go to page 2. Sick, directionless they worked. Okay, so they were sick, and there was no direction in the way they worked. Fork, stick were iron years away. Okay, so they hadn't even got the proper tools, okay, in order to work. After all, could they not blood their knuckles on rock, suck April hailstones for water and food? Okay, there's again talking about the Irish. Could they not blood their knuckles on rock, and could they not suck April hailstones for water and for food? So basically, just leave them to their own devices. Can they not figure it out themselves? Why do they need help? Okay, again, a lack of empathy. Why do they need help? The English are looking at them basically as if it's not our job. Why for that? Cunning as housewives. Again, we have a simile there. They're describing the Irish as cunning as housewives, each eyed as if at a corner butcher, the other's buttock. Okay, they're describing the Irish as cannibals here. Okay, they would eat each other if given the chance. Okay, now, you would have, some of them may have, but it is the British who has driven the Irish to be the guest. But again, it's that they would eat each other. And I mentioned it in another video to do with Warhorse about the dehumanization. So these people are being dehumanized, okay? It's as if they're cannibals who would eat one another if given half the chance. They don't see them as people. They see them as animals, basically. They see them as not worthy of their empathy, that they're a different breed of people. Okay, so we're going back to the second poem. Anything may have caused it. Spores, a childhood accident. One sees day after day these mysteries. So the doctor's saying, he doesn't know. Okay, and he's given possibilities, and he's calling it like a mystery. Again, there's a lack of care, lack of empathy here. Okay, it can be compared to up here. In both cases, they don't seem to care who they're dealing with. These people have serious problems, both here and here. Now, very different on the hierarchy of needs. Obviously, food and shelter are more basic needs, but this woman wants to have a child, and she's unable to have a child. And again, that lack of care, there is, I suppose, she's been dehumanized to a certain extent here as well. Okay, just on to page 3. Dusk. They will work tomorrow without him. They know it and walk clear. He has become a typhoid pariah. So, they will work tomorrow without him basically means he's going to die. Okay. And they know it and walk clear. They have to stay away because he is typhoid. It's contagious. Okay, so they become a typhoid pariah. His blood tainted, though he shares it with some there. So even his own family have to disown him and stay away. Okay, his own family disown him. And they must, and it's not in a bad sense, but they have to stay away from him in case they get sick as well. And I suppose disease was rampant in the workhouses that existed during these times where many of the people would have had to stay. He shares it with some there, so his own family. No more than snow attends its own flakes where they settle and melt, will they pray by his death rattle. Okay, so again, the snow attends its own flakes. Will they settle and melt? Will they pray by his death rattle? Okay, and we're moving on to this one. You never will, never you know, but take it well, woman. Grow your garden, keep house, goodbye. Again, look at the lack of empathy again. He's telling her to keep her garden, okay? Grow your garden, keep house, goodbye. Very matter of fact, lack of empathy, lack of care, understanding, all those things. Just don't care. Just like, and again, we'll come back to it now, that the Famine Road was described as useless, a waste of time. The comparison there then is, I suppose a woman sees her function is to give birth, and if she can't give birth, what use does she have? Now, that's what she's questioning, and the doctor is basically doing it there. What use does she have? In those days, I suppose there would be more unknown as today. Lots of women decide not to have children and are perfectly entitled to have their own careers, and it's not the same issue as it was back then. But it's comparing the Famine Road here to the lack of this woman being able to have a child. Okay, moving on to the final page. It has gone better than we expected, Lord Trevelyan. Okay, they're delighted with the results. Okay, better than we expect. Sedition, idleness cured in one. Okay, the fact that people were turning against the British and the fact that they were lazy, it was cured in one because they were dead. Or else, if they weren't dead, they were unable to fight. They were unable to plan rebellions. They were unable to basically argue with anything the British did. From parish to parish, field to field. Now, that's a very clever way. Parish to parish, field to field. So it was all over Ireland. Okay. Parish to parish, field to field. The wretches work till they are quite worn. So wretches work, worn. Okay, there's alliteration there. Then fester by their work. Look at the word fester. Fester, something like you would describe like a disease or a cut, not a human. Okay, they fester while by their work. Okay, so basically they work until they can work no more, and they lie asleep, sometimes at the side of the road. We march the corn to the ships in peace. Now here we see the reason for the Famine Road. While the people are built, or while the Irish people are making the roads or constructing the roads and hammering at these roads that are going nowhere, they're marching the corn to the ships in peace. This Tuesday I saw bones out my carriage window. So someone had just died. Someone had died, and basically their body had basically it wasn't buried, so the bones were all that was left. Someone had died on the road, and they weren't even buried, because at this point there was no one was able to take the time out to bury someone, because everyone, the only thing they were able to care about was themselves. Such was the situation they were in. Your servant Jones. Now, he's sending a letter there again, so he's telling them how delighted he is and how wonderful this experiment has worked. They're either dead or unable to rebel against their wishes. And then in the last one, just to tie up the poem, barren. Now, the word barren, very harsh. Never to know the load of his child in you. What is your body now, if not a famine road? Okay, so again, that her body is a metaphor for the famine road. Okay, so comparing the famine road, which was going nowhere, it would never be any use, basically telling the woman that she's not going to be any use. Boland's talking about how society maybe treats women who are unable to have children there. And also, I suppose, going back in time and dealing with how the British dealt with the Irish. And again, it's that whole dehumanization. So think about the metaphors, the similes, and I suppose the storyline there is really important, to know what the story of what happened in the poem. Sometimes you may be asked about Boland's clever use of language, or her clever use of references from Greek mythology to Irish history. Okay, yeah, and War Horse, Child Prime. There's always a story behind her poetry. So that's all we have for today on the poem. And again, if you have any questions, contact the website. And if you like the video, please hit like and subscribe. And as ever, there are more notes on endasEnglishNotes.com. Thank you.